Right, it's 9 years since the Manchester bombing, the 9-year anniversary. Remember when anniversaries used to be good? In the 80s and the 90s, before the globalist sociopaths started ruining everything. Anniversaries used to be good things. Now it's almost always commemorating some mass death attack. So yeah, that's today. I usually start with something a little bit more light-hearted though. So here's a migrant success story. Nobody died. Yeah, here's a fella, knife-wielding Afghan, Milad Panshiri, stormed into a hang on. No, I just saw there was no casualty. I thought it was going to be a feel-good story, like he was just doing his shopping or trying to master British cuisine or something. Threatening a store worker. Oh, you only threatened someone. It's not his fault. You've got to have compassion for these poor, downtrodden asylum seekers. You don't know what horrible things happened to him in his home. Hang on, what's he doing here? What's he doing? Is that wine? Release the hounds. Right, that's the butcher's bill. You've all seen it. It's the kids that's the worst, isn't it? Just remember, when they roll out the pianos today and play some tunes and talk about how you shouldn't look back in anger, just remember that every single word of that is absolute bollocks. Because every one of these young people, all them innocent women and kids and a few blokes, they would all, to the last man, still be alive if our baby-killing MP, that's what they are, they know what's going to happen. As I said, if you know for a fact if you let in 100,000 fighting-age men from anywhere, there's going to be a lot of chaos. You could let in 100,000 20-year-olds from Denmark and there'd be a surge in criminality because that's who does all the crime. Young, high testosterone men cause a lot of bother, right? But when you let them in from a third world country, the practices of faith which openly promotes the joyous rewards, the 72 virgins and the rivers of milk and honey, if you're willing to scatter yourself across the inside of a pop venue and take a big gang of women and children with you. The people that import them know they're going to murder people. But to them, because they're politicians, the worst type of bottom-feeding immoral scum, they just see numbers on a spreadsheet. They say, well, as long as it's all part of the quest to make planet Earth into one gigantic beige shithole, who cares if we lose a few thousand people? And then they blow the trains up in Madrid and they torture everyone to death in the Bataclan and they redecorate the insides of the Manchester Evening News Arena in brain matter grey. And people like Sadiq Khan say, well, you know, part and parcel of living in a big city didn't used to be part and parcel until knobheads like you turned up. And all the rest of the adherents of your ridiculous, clearly plagiarised big book of desert scribblings that nobody with two brain cells to rub together pays any attention to at all. So no, it didn't used to be part and parcel of living in a big city. You killed them. It's the way I look at it. And I live for the day that a genuinely right-wing party storms to power in the UK, and it definitely will, because the killing's never going to stop. We're only one bad day away from yet another atrocity. What, you think this is just going to stop? When every year we import another few thousand people with the exact same political leanings as Salman Abedi? You think this is just going to instantly dry up? Every year there's another 100,000 beardy weirdies moving to the UK, and every year more people like me leave, so these aren't going to stop. They're going to intensify. The next Southport, the next Manchester Evening News Arena, the next wall of dead children with flowers pinned to it while a dickhead plays Imagine on a piano is just around the corner. And we've got no tools to stop it from happening, because look at the headline from this story that I just picked this image off. Manchester Arena inquiry. Security did not approach the sweaty fella with the hissing backpack over fears of the obvious, the dreaded R word. So there you go. That's why we buried a load of women and kids 9 years ago today. And you can't even blame the security, can you? You can't blame them. They're products of their environment. Wiser men, you know, if there was an older bloke like me, raised in the 80s, 5 tours of places like Iraq and Afghanistan. It wouldn't have happened, would it? Because I was ruthlessly indoctrinated by the finest fighting men in the British Isles to always follow the evidence where it lies. Look for combat indicators. Scan the crowd, look for furtive people, recently shaved, sweating profusely, carrying large backpacks. I'd have had him, at worst, in a copper lock with his arm behind the back of his head, so he's tickling his own crown. And at best, if I was armed response or something, heavily ventilated before he got anywhere near a bunch of women and kids with his man-portable IED. So I'm not blaming this kid, I'm not. But it's something people don't talk about often enough. Look, he's a young lad. I feel bad for him. He's going to have to live with that. He probably feels crushing guilt when he sees the pictures of all them little girls and young women. And it's not his fault. It's the ruthless indoctrination campaign that's been waged upon the general public by military-grade intelligence. You all know this. Tobias Ellwood. These guys, you remember 77th Brigade, don't you? The British Army's psychological warfare formation? A team which specialises in psychological operations and online information warfare? Yeah, the state used your money to fund a military operation to indoctrinate their own people so that you'd see things their way, which is, you haven't got the brains you were born with. And you think if a radicalised teenage holy warrior who can recite his daft book of desert scribblings upside down and backwards is dragged up in the foothills of the Hindu Kush, the moment his big toe touches the sands in England, well, he becomes a tweed-wearing dandy. And he loves water slides, titty bars, and backyard barbecues. Of course he does. It makes loads of sense, doesn't it? So, back to this kid. I feel bad for him. Kyle Lawler, who said he had a bad feeling about the bomber, Mr. Abedi, but he didn't approach him for fear of being branded the R word. And there's nothing worse than that, is there? Definitely, that is way worse than being a kiddie fiddler. Well, we all know that. Because if you're that, they'll send you to prison straight away. If there's even the merest rumour that you're that, off you pop to Wormwood Scrubs. Mr. Mellier and Lucy Connolly are evidence to that. But if you're merely tonking teenagers above takeaways in Truro, well, they'll let you do that for decades on. They don't care. Won't do anything about that. And on the off chance they do charge you, it's not racially aggravated, like all the crimes they throw at white people who have opinions that the government don't like. Carl was only 18 at the time of the attack, so that's the main reason I wanted to read this article out. Not enough people remember that political correctness kills. B, the government has waged psychological warfare operations against their own people. And C, Carl Lawler, if he sees this video, should not hold himself accountable. An 18-year-old lad raised by British military intelligence against his will should hold no accountability at all for what occurred. None. He told the police he was conflicted because he thought something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. 5 minutes later, you know what happened. Nuts and bolts packed around explosives. Could have been worse. In Palestine, they all use rat poison mixed with nuts and bolts just to rub salt in a wound. Well, not salt, rat poison. In his statement prepared for the inquiry, Mr. Lawler said, I had a bad feeling about him, but he didn't have anything to justify it. Although he was fidgety and sweating. Yeah, clean-shaved, fidgety and sweating, dressed all in black, carrying a massive backpack. An older bloke, a combat veteran, anyone who'd had any training worth a wank would have pinged him a mile away. But he probably went to a comprehensive in Manchalabad where they told him, you know what the real problem is in the world, Kyle? People like you. Salman, he's a good lad. That's why we're letting his dad claim benefits for 6 wives, and he's importing all the other people he's related to. And several of them he's probably going to marry, because that's what they do, the filthy bastards. Kyle said, I didn't want people to think I was stereotyping him. I was scared of being wrong and branded. Yeah, you'll definitely get branded. Starmer's going to introduce a law next year where you literally get branded with a hot iron. They just put a big R into your forehead and then chop one of your hands off and replace it with sort of like Abu Hamza's hook, but instead it's just a big sort of neon capital R. And just walk around with that, waving it about, so everyone knows and can spit on you and throw stones. He said he had a guilty feeling and holds a lot of blame on himself, poor bastard. And then there's all these puff pieces about how the bomber smiled as he walked. Yeah, of course he did, because he was motivated 100% by his faith, and he thought the party's about to start. Think of that. They talk about this as if all faiths are equally bad. Like, ooh, Christianity was pretty bad in the 12th century. Jesus used to say, if someone slaps you on the left cheek, offer them your right. He didn't say, blow 200 infidels to bits and it's party time after you're dead, son. No, never said that. If he did, I don't think his message would have proved as popular with the kids at Sunday school. So that's today's video. There's all the victims. Remember them. Spare a thought for poor old Kyle and get angry at the two groups responsible. One, fundamentalist religious zealots from the third world who shouldn't be in the UK in the first place, and two, perhaps the root cause of all of our problems, the collection of reprobates, sexual deviants and thieving parasites that infest the Houses of Parliament and the House of Lords. That's who we need to blame. Oh yeah, half the coppers, nearly all the judges. If Rupert does win by a landslide and gets a strong mandate from the tens of millions of extremely angry working class people, because funny old thing, you get a little bit pissed off when you see dead kids all over the TV at various points throughout the year, he's going to have his work cut out for him, isn't he? The wood chippers would have to be running 24/7. There'll be rolling blackouts. You know, they have like a lot of pressure on the power grid at half time during a World Cup match. If Rupert got a mandate to do what the general public wants to see him do, i.e. electrify all the benches in the Houses of Parliament and have 2,000 wood chippers switched on 24/7. We'd have rolling blackouts and we'd need to frack the entirety of the North Sea just to get the petrol for the wood chippers. So he's got his work cut out, lads. I'm sure with a stiff upper lip and some good old British spunk, I'm sure we're up to the task though. But that's just my opinion. If you think you shouldn't look back in anger, because, I mean, they're only dead women and kids and we've got loads of them. Can't move for them in England because unlike the Chinese and the Arabs, we don't instantly throw our spouses and sisters down the stairs if they're carrying a baby of the wrong gender. So there's loads of them. There's loads of them. If you think that, please leave some deranged ramblings down there for us all to laugh at, and I'll see you all later for a live stream. All right, have a good one. Toodle pip. Cheers.